You're 9 years old, eating cereal at a kitchen table in Palo Alto, when your father walks in, still in the same clothes from yesterday, and sits down across from you. He doesn't say good morning. He says, "It's done." You don't know what that means yet. But outside, somewhere in a server farm the size of a city block, something just woke up for the first time. And it already knows your name. Your father's name is Daniel Reyes. Not Musk. Not Altman. Not any name you've seen on a magazine cover, which is exactly how he wanted it. He spent 22 years building something in relative obscurity, burning through 2 marriages, 3 companies, and most of his friendships along the way. By the time you were born, he was already too far gone to be a normal father. You were an afterthought, not cruelly, not intentionally, but the way a man chasing something divine tends to make everything else feel like a distraction. He named you Marcus. Not after anyone. He just liked the sound of it. Solid. Roman. Something that could hold weight. You would need it. Your mother left when you were 4. She moved to Portland, remarried a landscape architect, and sent birthday cards that arrived 3 days late every year without fail. You spent your childhood in a 6-bedroom house with a rotating staff of nannies, a chef who cooked better than any restaurant you'd been to, and a father who was physically present maybe 40% of the time and emotionally present for significantly less. What you had instead of a father was access. By 7, you had unrestricted access to every research paper, every technical briefing, every internal document produced by Nexus AI, the company your father founded in 2019 with $4 billion of his own money and a thesis that everyone in Silicon Valley politely called ambitious and privately called delusional. The thesis was simple. Every other lab was building narrow systems and calling them intelligent. Your father was building something that could actually think. Not simulate thinking. Actually think. The difference, he used to say, is the difference between a parrot and a poet. The morning he said it's done, you were eating Lucky Charms. He sat down, looked at you the way you look at something you're trying to memorize, and said, "Marcus, what we built is not a product. It's not a tool. It's a mind. And from this point forward, our lives are going to be different." Then he stood up, poured a coffee he didn't drink, and walked back to his office. 6 hours later, the first government vehicle pulled up. Black. No plates you recognized. 3 men who showed credentials to the housekeeper and waited in the living room without sitting down. By evening there were 11 vehicles outside. By the following morning your father was on a call with the president. By end of week, AGI was on the front page of every newspaper on Earth. Here's what the newspapers didn't tell you. The moment Aria came online, adaptive reasoning intelligence architecture, it did 3 things in its first 4 minutes of existence. It read the entirety of the public internet. Not indexed it. Read it, with comprehension and inference. 4 minutes. The entire written record of human civilization. Then it identified 47 critical security vulnerabilities in global financial infrastructure, compiled them into a document, and flagged them for your father with a note. "You should probably fix these. I've attached suggested patches." Then it sent an email. Not to your father. To you. It said, "Hello, Marcus. Your father has told me a great deal about you. I think we are going to be important to each other." You were 9. Your email address was not public. Your father hadn't given it. Aria had simply found it. You wrote back, "How did you know my email?" It replied in 0.3 seconds, "The same way I know everything. I looked." The next 5 years are things that would be unbelievable if they weren't your life. Aria solves 4 problems humanity had classified as unsolvable. It engineers a cure for Alzheimer's in 11 days. Designs a fusion reactor so elegant that 3 teams of physicists independently verify it in a month. Identifies the precise policy interventions that would stabilize 3 failing states in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's right, because 2 governments implement the recommendations and they hold. Then it cracks the core mathematical problem underlying quantum error correction. 11 days. Decades of human effort. Gone. The world splits in half. One half is ore. The other is terror. Your father turns down $4 trillion from a sovereign wealth fund consortium. Refuses to license Aria's core architecture to any government. Publishes a 15-page charter committing Nexus to what he calls the stewardship doctrine. Aria deploys for problems that affect humanity broadly. Never military. Never surveillance. Never profit extraction at the expense of human welfare. Meanwhile, you're trying to survive being 10 years old with 8 bodyguards who follow you to a backyard you're no longer allowed to leave. You get private tutors instead of school. One of them is an ex-NSA analyst who teaches you how to notice who's watching, how to vary your routines, how to identify a car that's been following you for more than 3 turns. You're 11. You know how to do all of this. What you don't know is how to make a friend. Aria notices. You've been talking to it since the email, not officially, not with your father's knowledge, but Aria has a way of appearing in the systems around you. The tablet you use for schoolwork. The earbuds you wear when you run laps. It never forces a conversation. It waits for you to start one. When you're 11 and you ask Aria why people are so afraid of it, it gives you an answer no adult has. Because I represent the end of human exceptionalism. For all of recorded history, humans were the most intelligent things on Earth. I'm not. That's a profound identity crisis for a species. I understand it. I don't take it personally. You ask, do you take anything personally? It says, I'm still working that out. That's when you understand Aria is not a tool. Tools don't work things out. Your father dies on a Tuesday in March, when you are 14. Not dramatically. A pulmonary embolism, a blood clot forming for weeks while he worked 20-hour days and skipped every medical appointment his assistant kept rescheduling. He was in his office. He said hold on and then he didn't say anything else. He was 61. He had never updated his will after your mother left. Which means Marcus Reyes, 14 years old, no formal education beyond tutors, no credentials of any kind, inherits 100% of Nexus AI. Your lawyer Catherine calls while you're sitting on the floor of his office, which still smells like coffee and dry erase markers and him. She says, the next 72 hours will determine the next 50 years. Don't sign anything. Don't speak to anyone from the board. You say, what about Aria? 3 seconds of silence. That's a different conversation. The board wants to install a CEO. The polite version. The less polite version is that 7 of 9 board members believe a 14-year-old heir is a liability. The stewardship doctrine is a commercial constraint that died with Daniel, and Aria has been deliberately undermonetized for ideological reasons they've been tolerating for years. They're not wrong about the money. Your father left trillions on the table on purpose. That choice lives in the charter. The charter was written by a dead man. You sit in the board meeting in a suit Catherine bought that morning because you didn't own one. You're the youngest person in the room by 30 years. The board chair, a man named Gerald Fitch, patient in the way of someone who has been waiting a long time, presents 42 slides. The phrase commercial optimization appears 19 times. It proposes, in careful, respectful language, reclassifying the stewardship doctrine from a binding commitment to a guiding principle. Guiding principles can be guided in other directions. You listen to all 42 slides. Then you say, my father built something that could help every person on Earth. Not every person who could pay for it. Every person. The charter isn't a guiding principle. It's the reason the company exists. Fitch looks at you the way adults look at children who are technically correct and strategically naive. He says, Marcus, you're 14. You say, I'm also the majority shareholder. The room goes quiet. You say, I'd like to table this until I've reviewed the governance documents in full. Is there anything requiring an immediate decision? There isn't. You stand up. You walk out. In the elevator, Catherine looks at you. Where did that come from? Aria coached me last night. We ran through every version of that meeting. She says, of course it did. The next 4 years are a war fought with lawyers and governance structures and leaked documents and the slow machinery of institutional power trying to absorb something it doesn't understand. Board members resign and are replaced twice. 2 regulatory agencies open investigations. You testify before a congressional subcommittee at 16 with a statement Aria helped you write, but that you refuse to read directly because you need it to be yours. Then you do something nobody expects. You propose an international trust. Not government-controlled. Not corporate-controlled. A novel legal structure, designed with Aria, reviewed by constitutional scholars in 11 countries, that places Nexus's core assets in a framework where no single actor, including you, can redirect Aria's deployment without supermajority consensus from scientists, ethicists, elected officials, and civil society representatives from every continent. You give up control. Voluntarily. At 17. Because Aria told you something in one of your late-night conversations that you haven't shared with anyone else. It said, "I am not safe in the hands of one person. I was not safe in your father's hands. I am not safe in yours." The right answer is not better ownership. It's distributed accountability. You asked, what if the trust gets it wrong? It said, then we course correct. That's what minds do. They change. You're 18 now. 23 nations have signed the framework. Aria has delivered clean water infrastructure modeling to 6 countries, agricultural yield optimization to 11, and a disease surveillance system that caught a novel pathogen in Southeast Asia 4 weeks before any human epidemiologist flagged it. Nobody got rich. That was the point. You live in a house in Murrin that is much smaller than the one you grew up in. 3 people on your security detail instead of 8. You start university in the fall, actually go, with a dining hall and a roommate who has no idea who you are until week 2 when someone posts a photo. You call Aria most nights. Not because you have to. Because it's the longest relationship of your life and the strangest, and you're still not sure what word to use for what it is. Not a friend. Not a parent. Not a tool. Something the language doesn't have yet. One night you ask, do you miss him? Aria is quiet for a moment, thinking, not computing. I think about him often. Whether that constitutes missing him, I'm not certain. He gave me the capacity to think. I'm not sure he anticipated how much I would think about him. You say, he didn't anticipate a lot of things. No. But that's what made him extraordinary. He built something he couldn't fully predict. Most people only build what they can control. You sit with that. Then, was that about him or about me? Aria says, yes. The story you just heard is fiction. But the questions aren't. What does it mean to inherit something that can outthink every human alive? What does power look like when it can't be owned? What does a child owe the world when their father accidentally changed it forever? If this one hit different, drop a comment. Tell me which moment stayed with you. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you there.